Welcome, viewers, to the Register of Deeds rundown interview with Mr. Johnathon Ring, candidate for the position of the Southern Essex County Registry of Deeds. My name is Danelle Ellen Doonan. For the record, I am a registered independent voter. I live in Ipswich. I have lived in Ipswich for 40 years. I am a title examiner. I have been a title examiner for 42 years. I am also a member of the New England Land Title Association, a non-attorney member of the Real Estate Bar Association of Massachusetts, and a co-founder and current president of the Massachusetts Independent Title Examiners Association, which was established in 2005. The Massachusetts Independent Title Examiners Association mission, created in 2005, is to promote the understanding, awareness, and importance of producing the proper examination, abstracting, and reporting of the Registry of Deed land records, thereby ensuring the integrity and quality of the title product. Massachusetts Independent Title Examiner members are committed to the industry they serve by upholding the highest standards of professionalism, integrity, and best practices that benefit the Massachusetts legal community in the Registry of Deeds. This interview will be conducted from my perspective as a title examiner. We did invite candidate Eileen Duff to attend this interview. However, her campaign informed me that her schedule was just too busy and she was unavailable to make the time. So, some viewers may be saying, okay, what's the big deal? The Register of Deeds position has long time been considered a benign office, that people generally look down the ballot and say, well, who was the incumbent? Well, this year is a unique opportunity for both candidates. Former Registrar O'Brien held the position of Register of Deeds for 48 years. I've been doing this for 42 years, so he is the only registrar I have ever known. He was a proponent for the Massachusetts Independent Title Examiners Association. He listened to us. Sometimes we had disagreements, but his staff is an excellent staff. They know what they're doing, and they're always willing to help customers in general, but particularly title examiners. We work hand in hand with the Registry of Deeds in all counties. We're probably the first people that spot problems, and we report them to the register, and we try to get those taken care of. A little brief history on the Registry of Deeds and why it's such an important position. We now in Essex South have two locations. The registry recently moved to the Cummings Center in Beverly. They have kept a satellite office in Salem. Essex County has two registry districts. Essex North is in Lawrence, but we're talking about the Essex South Registry of Deeds. Massachusetts has registered and recorded land, so two land record recording systems. There are 14 counties in Massachusetts, but 21 Registry of Deeds districts. Some counties have more than one, more than two. You would think that such a large organization would be able to use similar systems, but that is not the case in Massachusetts. Many registries have work off of the ACS system, which is the Mass Land Record System. Other registries have their own independent websites. Essex South is one of those registries that has its own independent website. The office is responsible for recording and maintaining all property records, including deeds, mortgages, liens, easements, etc. And if you've ever bought property or you've ever tried to get a mortgage, refinance, and all of a sudden someone tells you, we have an undischarged mortgage from 10 years ago, we need to get that fixed. We need to find a discharge. And the homeowner says, oh my gosh, I paid that off 10 years ago, 8 years ago. What's going on? That's a record title problem that a title examiner would pick up on. Or somebody says a title is done and a title examiner has examined the property plan, if there is one, and oh my gosh, there's a water easement under your property, a pipeline. and you are surprised. So the title examiner picks up on, in reports to the closing attorney, problems, encumbrances, appurtenant rights that a piece of property may have. So it's therefore very, very important that the Registry of Deeds have accurate records. We're all human, typos happen, names get misspelled, which is oftentimes one of the biggest problem areas, because encumbrances can be missed by misspelled names. So Jonathan, with that, please tell us about yourself and why you want to be Register of Deeds. You have been very persistent and passionate about this position since at least 2018 when you ran against John O'Brien.
Yes.
And you are a gritty guy and you want this. So tell us why.
Thank you. My name's Johnathon Ring, a candidate for Register of Deeds in this district, as Dinal said. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
You are right, I am very persistent. I ran against John O'Brien in the last 2018 election, and I didn't quite make it, but it was very competitive. And I actually learned a lot, from him, through that campaign. I come at this from the perspective of a homeowner and a taxpayer who wants the best customer service from the Registry of Deeds. I'm very fortunate that when my father passed away, we looked at our property and the land, and the title was only registered in my mother's name, which if she had passed away would present a huge problem for our family. So we had our attorney draft a quitclaim deed, put it in our name, my brother and myself, so that right of succession would be much easier should she pass away. Now, thankfully, she hasn't. My mother is alive and well, but I look at it from that perspective. I look at it from the perspective of you mentioned errors that happen. I look at it also from the perspective that there are scammers and title fraud, out there. In fact, I was just reading an article from the Boston Herald. Many of you may have seen it. A $1 million home was taken from an individual in Dorchester for just $100 by his uncle that scammed him. It's an elderly man that doesn't speak English and depended on people to help him. But right now they're being prosecuted for the scam. But, you look at other more nefarious schemes. There's a couple from South Carolina that purchased a home in Concord, a property in Concord, undeveloped, that they've held in their family for decades, and they were hoping to gift it to their family, to their children. But there was a scam online that purported to own the property. They got real estate agents to help them out. They essentially sold this property for about $500,000, and the property is probably worth north of $1 million.
I will just add to that, property fraud is among the top 5 title insurance claims that are made today, and mostly on vacant land.
You're right, and it mostly does happen on vacant land. So they represented themselves from Texas. They had a UPS store, and I used to work at a UPS store. So we've actually seen people try to fraudulently set up mailboxes at UPS stores without ever walking in the store. I also look at it from a management perspective. I was a manager of a UPS store for several years. That's how we met. And I was also manager of chair of a Rockport Housing Authority. So I look at it from a budget and a municipal perspective as well. because it's also a $3 million budget that's allocated to the Registry of Deeds. It roughly, on average, collects about $34 million worth of taxes and fees from the Commonwealth based on property sales as well as filing.
Recording fees,
Recording
excise tax.
Exactly.
Yep.
And the register is paid about $174,000 a year to manage about 26 employees, at the registry. So I'm concerned about management. I'm concerned about fraud. I want, and John O'Brien actually was very much concerned about title fraud, and he promoted the Property Fraud Watch program, which I'm surprised that most people don't know exists. And if anything, I want to expand upon the Property Fraud Watch program, promote it to all the communities, work with boards of assessors to promote it to taxpayers.
And that's a really good point.
Yep.
Because all of the counties do have the Property Fraud Watch available to them. A couple things with that. They only do it by a person's name. So if you have a common last name
Yep.
or full common name, you will get alerts. And that can sometimes panic people because they're thinking it's an alert about their property, but it could be somebody else's property somewhere else
Right.
with the same last name or same full name.
Right.
But you brought up the assessor's office, and I think that's a really great point, property fraud, because there are, especially in this Essex County area, lots of land, vacant land, that is owner unknown
Yep.
and not on the tax record.
Yep.
And those are ideal, I would think, for people to fraudulently go after. Now, I think that the assessor's office needs to be a bit more vigilant about trying to find who the last record owners were
Yep.
for these vacant lands for two reasons. One, to prevent fraud, property fraud, and two, to put those properties on the tax roll and start collecting taxes. So,
Absolutely.
So that's a great area, I think, to discuss with the assessor's office.
Absolutely.
You also brought up another point that the registrar's salary is basically about $174,000.
Yep.
That seems like a considerable amount of money to a lot of people. Do you and will you consider this a full-time job for you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I want to, I already work, I work 40 hours a week anyway, but obviously I'm going to, if I get elected, I'll quit that job because, I want to work at the registry 40, 50 hours a week with hopefully my future coworkers at the registry. And you have to be a full-time manager. Management is huge. It's, you have to focus on who you're hiring. You have to know more about HR law than anything, in HR regulations and whatever in regulations the state wants you to abide by. You have to know not to ask illegal questions like a person's religion, for example, or sexual orientation or political beliefs. None of that. This is a job you get elected to through political means, but you have to make it as non-political as you possibly can.
Obviously, it sounds like you stand on the position that this should remain an elected office and not an appointed office.
I have stated, like in the Marblehead Current, they interviewed me. I did state that it should stay an elected position because this is a way for the public and the voters to have checks and balances on the system, but it also makes it tough because you're subject to, not too many groups wanted to do a forum on this, and I'm very grateful for this interview. I've had a few other interviews. But it should remain, but that's always going to be a debate. Should it be appointed or should it be elected? Should it be partisan or nonpartisan? It definitely should be nonpartisan.
I agree with that. deeds, mortgages, liens, don't care what your political
Absolutely.
affiliation is.
Yeah, I mean, you and I might disagree who we're going to vote for president, and we won't talk about that, but or any of the others. But at the end of the day, if I'm elected, it doesn't matter how you voted on anything. Your property, your deed should be secure and safe, and accurately recorded, and that's the most important thing.
It is a 6-year position. Do you think that's too long? Clearly, there's been longevity in this position, not only in Essex County, but in other registries. Do you think 4 years, 6 years, why?
What I believe in is term limits, for sure. Like no more than 2 terms for any elected position. But whether it's 4 years or 6 years may not make as much of a difference. But definitely, I believe in term limits.
Before I move on to some of the shared sentiments that you and your opposing candidate have, I would like to talk briefly about the importance of, again, the Registry of Deeds being secure. Back in 1827, the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds burned. All but one book survived. Well, let me back up. Only one book survived. Everything else was destroyed. And those records are still needed today.
Yeah.
As a title examiner, for residential closing, we usually have to go back 50 years, 50 to 60 years in the chain of title, and run all the owners to date from their time of acquisition, and then selling it. We have to look at the property description, see if there are any, you start off with a 100-acre parcel back in 1900. Today you're down to a 200 by 200 square foot lot. So we have to always make sure descriptions flow properly, that when deeds for bigger parcels get deeded out. That's not the registry's duty. The registry does not examine the title.
Right.
You record the documents. Whether the information presented is accurate is not your job. But you need to make sure, it's signed, sealed, acknowledged. I think sometimes registers kind of go beyond their duties, but that's another topic for another time.
Well, sure, there definitely are limits to what the Registry of Deeds can do. Sometimes I spend more time explaining what it doesn't do rather than what it does. The Registry of Deeds doesn't sell property, obviously, and it doesn't even regulate the sale of property. And it definitely can't offer legal advice. So those are things it can't do. But there are things it can do. Of course it can, provide notification, to individuals, for the property that's been recorded. And it can work with law enforcement as well if it's reported to them that a property was, fraudulently misdeeded, to someone else. And definitely work with law enforcement, to stop and even reverse any title fraud.
And those cases
occurs.
have happened in Essex South. Yep.
Exactly.
Even pretty recently.
I think it happened in Hamilton, didn't it? Nationwide. There are $350 million worth of losses, regarding title theft. And at first, somebody once said, oh well, there's that doesn't seem like much. 350 million, there are 350 million people, in the nation. But when you're talking about your property that you inherited or that you hope to gift to your children, it takes years to build up equity in your home, in your property. And you might be land rich, you might not be rich, according to monetary standards, but you want to be able to build on your property.
You want to protect your assets.
Protect your assets. That's your inheritance. That's your family's inheritance.
Yeah. So, according to each candidate's website, each of you share the same sentiment, that the Registry of Deeds is one of the most important systems in the Commonwealth, and is the primary resource of official land title information, and that the role of Register of Deeds is to be keeper of the public record.
Yes.
There are some corporations out there now who are, as we like to call, data mining,
Yep.
and trying to establish their own registry of deed record system. And, you know, that is happening, and it's a possibility that people could go to those sites thinking that they are looking at the official public record. So
Right.
I think the Registry of Deeds, the Secretary of State needs to really press home the point that the registry recording system, the Registry of Deeds in Massachusetts, is the official land record entity.
I agree.
Each of you agree that security, accuracy, accessibility, and modernization of the official public land records is not only essential but critical, especially today in the age of AI.
Yeah.
However, as we discussed, property fraud is in the top 5 title insurance claims made today.
Yep.
Each of you bring years of public service and customer service experience with you. Given all of these similar stances that you both have, what changes would you make to the Registry of Deeds in order to secure the integrity? I do think because that's always the integrity, the accuracy of the registry records has always been the main issue. It's what the issue was when we started the Massachusetts Title Examiners Association back in 2005. It's our mission, it's in our mission statement.
Yep.
So this is nothing new.
Right.
It continues. It always needs to be kept up with and improved on. So what other areas of improvement would you have in mind for the Registry of Deeds?
I think definitely the public needs to know, like, anytime that there's a service interruption, whether it's an interruption, an online interruption, a website interruption, or any errors that need to be fixed, that, you know, it's not, you know, or if there's a closing, an office closing, you know, as well, that it can't be open to the public for a certain amount of time. You know, definitely improvements in customer notification need to be made.
For example, putting it on your home page.
Yes.
You know, so users who go into the online data records and go to your website, that's the first thing they see.
Definitely, because you need to know if you're a customer of the registry, you're doing regular business. Is there something that's going to impede that business, and will it be resolved? So that's something definitely I would have to task the IT department to do.
Having a close relationship with IT
Absolutely
is extremely important. This is the way this is not a registry book, but it was compiled by an attorney who did a lot of real estate transactions on the North Shore. But he had this book created because this is similar to the way the books looked at the Essex South Registry.
Yes.
And most registries, when I first started doing title work, we got a workout, lifting the books up on the high shelves way over my head,
Yes.
bending down, running around the registry. It was a great workout.
Yes.
I believe it was the 1980s, or maybe the 90s, the books started getting smaller.
Yeah.
And that was great, because registries were running out of space.
Yeah.
And then the digitalization of the registry records started happening. And when they were converting, or during the conversion, there were sections of books on shelves that did not get online. And it probably took a couple weeks before title examiners started to notice that there were problems in their either chain of title or marginal references to mortgages. It's like you see a list of assignments and there's no discharge. There's no reference to a discharge or another assignment. So that's when things started to get noticed, and the registry had to change its notification of how updated the land records were on the website and correct those, rescan those books. But again, improvements have been made, things have gotten a lot better. However, scanning issues still occur. People still need to call the registry and report a scanning issue or have a copy sent to them, emailed, faxed. The Essex South Registry Customer Service Department is excellent in that regard. Some of the registries have a language option.
Yes.
And honestly, I'm not sure if Essex South has that. I know Essex North offers.
Yes, I don't think the Southern website, the website, hasn't really changed much over the years, over the past several years. In fact, it's still the same from when I ran 6 years ago. And yes, I mean, others do have a language translation. You can always Google Translate, but I do believe that we should be able to offer language translation, on that website. And also, even digitizing records, you can provide a language translation for the title itself.
Yeah, I think. And
it's a little tougher to do that.
I think all of that needs to be offered.
Yeah.
But again, with a warning that there's no guarantee to the accuracy of the translation that somebody may be going to and interpreting.
Yes.
And that's a big problem that we see with AI as well. So this whole area of using AI people need to still be warned about the accuracy of using that. At a recent conference I was at, there was an AI presentation, and I mentioned the fact that a lot of the research I have to do goes back into the 1800s and early 1700s, and you need to know how to read cursive writing.
Yep.
You need to interpret and understand and read old English common writing.
Absolutely.
I read deeds that are in pounds and shillings, and S's look like F's, and it's very hard it takes time to read through that. But this person at the presentation said, "Oh, AI can handle that." And I was like, and everybody in the crowd moaned because that remains to be seen.
But even if it can, you still need training because the human touch is still important.
Exactly.
Because in any system there can always be a glitch.
Exactly.
And not only that, but we need to make the physical books, available.
Absolutely.
So that if it can't be translated or translated incorrectly, or if the scan is blurry, and there's no way to improve the resolution, then you need to be able to go to the actual book itself, open it up, and see what it says.
Yeah, I think it was a real shame when the registries stopped printing books, all but one, the Norfolk County Registry.
Yeah.
Register O'Donnell still prints books. On his website, they also offer a translation button so that they've had genealogists and people go in and read the document, and then then it's been printed and put on his site, which is very helpful and useful. But I have found errors with whoever was interpreting the language, in some cases, with a name not be correct, and that really can mess up a title. Also, some of the websites, which I think goes back to maybe the registers take a little bit too much leeway on their websites, is if you have a mortgage and you scan down the page, it will say satisfied, Y or N, yes or no. And I have found cases where it says yes, so people just checking their own name, or a realtor going to check a seller's name to get an idea of what is out there on this seller that they're going to have to take care of at closing or get payoffs for. someone just looking at that page and seeing the mortgage and then seeing, yes, it's been satisfied, and then doesn't go any further to actually check that satisfaction, the discharge, the release, to make sure that's what the document is and it's in proper form. I have found cases where that discharge, yes, satisfied, yes, is actually an assignment of that mortgage. So again, the public needs to be warned about the accuracy. All the websites have a disclaimer.
Yep.
Everything always needs to be confirmed, just not to take verbatim what the registry is telling us.
Right.
Because again, they're not in the business of doing the title.
Right.
They are in the business of recording documents.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I don't know how much time we have left.
And any of these improvements too, or any ideas of improvements, that's what I want to work with the other registries of deeds around the state, because they are required to meet. I don't know how often they meet, but they are required to meet and exchange ideas. And I want to learn from all the other registries, best practices and what we could do, take from them to improve, improve what we're doing.
And that's
here.
a great way to end this, because you will become, if elected, a member of the Massachusetts Registers and Assistant Registers of Deeds Association. And one of the biggest responsibilities of that association is for compiling a uniform indexing standard. The indexing standard is being revised right now and expected to come out in 2025. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, all the registries, if you go to their websites, if you look in the grantor-grantee books at the registries, you see how they abbreviate what documents are. And you would think that having a registry system that's all based on the same premise, that abbreviations would be uniform. There should be complete uniformity in the indexing standards to help the public understand the document abbreviations that they're looking at. But there isn't. So you will become a member of that association. You can fight that battle.
Yes, I will do the best. I will do the best that I can.
Great. Well, all the best to you, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, and please remember to get out to vote. Again, if you want to learn more about me, my website is jonathanring.org. Jonathanring.org. Election is November 5th, and early voting starts October 19th.
Is there anything else that you think we've missed or should have hit on?
One interesting idea that somebody said was cemetery records, just for historical nature. Cemetery records are not centralized, and they can be easily lost. You reminded me of that when you mentioned the Registry of Deeds that burned down and only one book survived. Well, I've heard of cases where you had city hall basements flooded, and the cemetery records that were all on paper and before they were digitized, and many are not digitized, were lost, as a result of that. And the only importance of that is just a lot of genealogical and historical research can be done, through those records as well, updating cemetery memorials as well, or not updating, but, keeping a list of them updated, rather, I should say.
And I will confirm that, because I have had to go into some of the gravesite websites and look for a tombstone and keep my fingers crossed that they list who is buried there, what family members, at least to give me a clue of who the heirs might be, and do my research. Although that it's just all for reference use. I still have to confirm all of that. But getting that knowledge without having to dig awfully far it's time saving.
No pun intended with dig.
That's right.
What an interesting note to close on. But again, please get out to vote November 5th.
Super.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
God bless you.